I think if you really want to offer a critique of something, you should really know your subject. And you shouldn't just do the conspiracy theorist style, do your own research. You should go deep, do meaningful research. But hey, why ruin a good time when you have vibes and feels? And so we have takes by Christians on how terrible atheists are, and these takes don't seem to understand what atheism is, and don't seem interested in remedying that lack of understanding. Hi, my name is Scarlett, and I'm an atheist and a skeptic, and today we're going to have some fun with one such video by Brian Holdsworth, seen here doing whatever the opposite of rocking an outfit would be, dressed in what looks like Catholic schoolgirl meets LL Bean. Is this what all the cool Canadian Catholics are wearing today? Today we're going to look at how atheism destroys reason. The thumbnail says it makes you dumb. And really, I think the it in question is Brian's video. Before we get into it, I want to let you know that this video will have a fair dose of snark and a little research, but not much. And some people might say, well, hang on a minute. Didn't you say you needed to dig deep in and understand? And yes, I do believe that, but Brian's video is so superficial, you don't need to do much thinking. You'll see what I mean as we go. There's the blibbity blab. Let's get going.
Okay, so before I begin, I have to qualify the form of atheism I'm going to be talking about in this video and why I'm focusing my attention on it. Because every time I do a video about atheism, I inevitably get multiple video replies from atheist channels accusing me of lumping atheism into one subset or just attacking a straw man.
Wah, atheists are meanie pies for calling me on my bullshit and trying to help me understand. It's so unfair. And yes, I'm being a meanie pie right now. And Brian deserves this.
Obviously, not all atheists are the same or believe the same things, but this kind of atheism I want to examine today was adhered to and promoted by some of the most prominent atheists in history. And the comments I most often see from atheists on my channel are assuming the truth of this system of thought, which is naturalism.
So it seems Brian does understand that atheists aren't all alike. If I could give him some advice, make a video addressing your issues with naturalism. Why talk about atheists at all, except for ragebait to drive engagement? There are atheists who believe in the supernatural. There are atheistic religions and religious philosophies. There's your freaking problem, man, and why people call you out. So let's hear your beef with naturalism.
Naturalism is the belief that only the natural world exists and that all phenomena can be explained from within it. There is no supernature or the supernatural or dimensions of reality outside the natural world. And if we hope to inquire about reality, the physical sciences, which focus their field of inquiry on the natural world, is all that we need. And since only the natural world exists, we have no need of a God who exists outside the natural world because there is no outside the natural world.
So I don't have any major issues with what Brian says here, but I would add that the natural world is all we have evidence for. By the way, here's some pics from a recent bike ride along the Delaware River. It was a beautiful day and I had a great ride. I hope they soothe you and bring you a shot of Zen before we get into the real dumb shit from Brian. Anyway, as I was saying, we know the natural world exists and we've been doing science on it for a bit. All we have are stories about gods, but nothing that demonstrates they exist. No evidence beyond things that can be explained by natural processes. Also, Bible God wasn't in some other realm, like he walked around here on earth. He made Sarah pregnant in her 90s and killed Moses just before they got to the promised land, and he made bets with Satan about beloved believers. A God that interacts with the world should be measurable, so chop chop, Brian, go do an experiment.
And when I've addressed this belief as a form of atheism in the past, I had multiple comments and video replies claiming that this version of atheism is utterly foreign to them and that I'm erecting a straw man to make my job easier.
Wah, more whining about meanie pie atheists. I'm not even sure what Brian claimed or what people said. It'd be nice if Brian came with receipts, but I'm not sure if he's characterizing these comments correctly, and I'm gonna go with no, unless I see something specific from him.
Which I have to admit I was a little dumbfounded by because...
Or maybe just dumb.
This view was held and promoted by a whole cast of extremely prominent and influential thinkers such as David Hume, Karl Marx, whose theories about history, politics, and human nature are astonishingly resilient and influential in spite of the tens of millions of dead people who were victims of those ideas.
You know who else's ideas caused tens of millions of deaths? With a little help from #facts. The poisoning the well against even considering the ideas of Marx is really disgusting. It's a fallacy to think the application of ideas has anything to do with their validity. If this were the case, Brian might have some self-awareness about his adherence to Catholicism. I don't know for sure how many deaths Christianity has caused through the ages, but a Christian publication estimates it at 177.94 million. Those aren't meanie pie atheists there, but they are progressive, so probably not real Christians. And does anyone want to lay money on whether Brian has actually read Hume? Even the Spark Notes? I would lay good money that he's only ever read what other people have said about Hume, or watched a YouTube video, or seen a reference to Hume somewhere. By the way, I haven't read Hume either, but I'm not out here holding some old Scottish philosopher up as a shield about my ignorance. Anyway, if Brian were interested in philosophy, like actually interested, he might actually make a go of reading some Marx. I think the ideas about the problem of the workers' alienation from their labor is still relevant, and his ideas that workers, the proletariat, should unite to have better control of the products of their labor instead of being exploited by their corporate overlords has some resonance today. But maybe what Brian really doesn't like is Marx calling out religion as benefiting the moneyed class and joining in the exploitation of workers. But the swipe at Marx here is but a mere nibble on the way to the main meal and not Brian's main course. So let's stop here and not get sidetracked by Marx.
Bertrand Russell, who should need no introduction, John Dewey, who basically revolutionized education as we know it, and virtually all of the new atheists such as Dawkins, Dennett, and Harris, as far as I can understand them, they all appear to be naturalists.
And I care why? Am I supposed to be cowed by the name drop of a bunch of atheists? Shrug emoji. And I know I appear dismissive of other atheists and people probably a lot smarter than me, but really what I'm dismissive of is Brian's name dropping them here. I have my own conjectures about why Brian is doing this, though. I can't be sure. He wants to pad out his video because his real point is super short and pretty dumb, and he could have already done it in this earlier wine fest. But also, it makes him appear smart by dropping all these names, even though he doesn't do anything with them, just dangles them here. But I guess in the end, I'm just left wondering, so what? What's this about?
So please don't reply that this is an uncommon form of atheism. It is arguably the most common, which is why I primarily focus my attention on it.
Yeah, hey you guys, don't come on to Brian's channel and comment about how dumb he is. Don't be meanie pie atheist. He's a smart boy.
But I've also heard several replies that have claimed that atheism isn't a belief or a worldview or a system of thought at all. It's just withholding of belief in God or gods until sufficient evidence can be offered, which, okay, if that's how you define your atheism, then well and good.
So people have tried to clarify this for Brian, and it's clear he doesn't quite get how withholding belief works. It's interesting to me that Christians like Brian really want to attach a whole realm of baggage to what is, in effect, a single belief. And as people point out, atheism is a part of worldviews, and sure, of course, let's all be pedantic about that. Yes, it is a part of worldviews, but it's not a worldview. So as for this label, naturalist, I really don't like to apply it to myself, but in the end, I don't see anything that shows that there is something beyond the natural world. I see claims of a supernatural realm, but no one has demonstrated it. No one has brought back evidence except stories. If someone comes along and does something like this, bring evidence, I'll believe. Same for gods. I know that for someone like Brian, who thinks his beliefs are manifest and obvious, it looks like I'm rejecting them. But in reality, I just don't see a reason to accept them.
But that's not how atheism has historically been defined. And the cast of characters I just named, like Russell and Dewey and Marx and Hume, they wouldn't agree with that definition.
And I guess I don't care. I don't even know if Brian is categorizing their beliefs properly. And frankly, I don't care. If someone listening to this wants to drop a line in the comments about one of these philosophers, that'd be great. But different atheists can decide how strong or weak their non-belief is. This just appears to me as more whining that Brian is super smart and atheists are meanie pies.
And I simply, forgive me for saying this, I just don't believe people who have entire YouTube channels dedicated to explaining their thinking as mere withheld beliefs. I've withheld my beliefs on a whole range of subjects like Bigfoot or UFOs, which is why I don't spend any time talking about them. The things that I don't believe in aren't of interest to me. I don't write books about them, and I don't erect YouTube channels to debunk them or the people who believe in them. I also don't identify myself with a term like a Bigfooter.
Yeah, Brian, and you probably didn't come out of belief in Bigfoot after a long soul-searching and praying session because Bigfoot never revealed himself to you when you were out hiking. And your family, all believers in Bigfoot, didn't ostracize you, punish you, disown you, kick you out of the house when you gave up your belief. And you haven't seen Bigfoot believers trying to change laws to line up with their belief in Bigfoot and interfering in the lives of a Bigfooters. I don't think Brian has watched a single video or read a blog about someone who came out of religious belief and into atheism and what that person's experiences were. He hasn't stopped to think about who atheists are and what their circumstances are. Or maybe he has, and this is just rage bait.
But considering people do call themselves atheists, they write books about their atheism and publish YouTube channels and blogs all about their atheism, seems to me that withheld beliefs is the last thing you could describe them as. And they might say the only reason they're putting so much effort into describing their beliefs is as a defensive response because Christians are always trying to force their beliefs on others.
I'm going to opt for Brian is aware of atheists and he's trying to rage bait. Do you know, for a while when I saw thumbnails of videos for Brian, I thought they were about J.P. Sears, and I didn't watch them because I thought, who wants to watch that idiot? Then I did watch Brian, and I thought, who wants to watch that idiot?
To which I would say, well, now who's building straw men? Because forcing people to believe in Christianity isn't something that goes on anywhere in the world today, and if you could find instances of it, it would be the rarest of exceptions.
So now there are no preachers on streets yelling at people, no families who threw out a child who stopped believing or disowned a family member who changed religions or even became an atheist. There's no pressure from communities who ask newcomers what church they go to. No pressure on politicians to even embrace like the trappings of religion or to pray or whatnot. Like, let's look at this recent example from the Humanist magazine. This is the spring 2025 issue, and it's by Sarah Levin called Secular Civics Representation Matters, Council Member Marissa Postler, or Posler. I'm not sure how she pronounces her name. Anyway, Levin asked, why was it important for you to be open about your non-religious identity? Postler responds, I never made a big deal out of it. I wasn't walking around campaigning as the atheist city councilwoman. I was simply campaigning as me. Later in this interview, she mentions feeling pressure to attend an event called God and Country Music. Now, she didn't go in the end, and she held her values and all that kind of stuff. But this is just to show you the kind of pressure that people feel from religious people. Or just go on Right Wing Watch to look at all the ways different pastors are trying to get involved in politics, or religious representatives are using their religion to make decisions that impact all of us and are not science-based but based only on their religion. Or just listen to Paula White talking about her appointment to the White House Faith Office.
And maybe even sin for me to miss the mark. If I didn't fulfill this to try to make our nation what God established it to be and give the future an opportunity, because without God and without faith, we are a lost people.
By the way, I do want to point out a little rhetorical shift that Brian accomplished here. He talked about atheists saying that Christians are pushing their beliefs onto them. And now he's saying pushing Christianity specifically. These are two different things. And what a lot of people are saying is, even if you're not forcing me to be Christian, you're forcing me to live by your religious beliefs that I don't accept. And it's a very, very important distinction.
It's also quite offensive to make this accusation. There are multiple genocides taking place right now as I'm making this video against Christian populations in places like Syria and Nigeria. But there are no Christian populations murdering Muslims or Buddhists or Hindus in order to eradicate them or force them to convert.
Wow, awesome deflection. I guess that's it, y'all. Pack it in. Christians are being killed in other countries that are not the US and Canada. So that means that Christians aren't trying to change the laws in the US to adhere to their beliefs instead of some neutral measure like science or something like that. Or I guess it's not that big of a deal if a woman can't get an abortion or trans people can't get access to their health care or Christianity is forced onto kids in schools. We're not being killed like those Christians elsewhere, so shut up. Let's not bring up history, like the Crusades or the Spanish Inquisition or the Holocaust or anything like that. By the way, there are agencies a little skeptical of the numbers Christians throw out about how many Christians are being killed worldwide. And I found this from a website, all-party parliamentary group, International Freedom of Religion or Belief. It's from 2018, and it cites different organizations that collect data and talk about those assumptions. And the big thing is the estimates about the number of Christians killed for their faith depend on the definitions and assumptions used, which makes perfect sense to me. And this piece is a little skeptical of the numbers that are at the higher end because they might be taking into account Christians that get caught up into some kind of political strife or attacks on other religious groups that have nothing to do with them being Christians, but they're Christians and they get caught up in this and they get killed, which is deplorable, but they're not being killed because they're Christians, so you can't blame that on it. So out of curiosity, I also tracked down these articles that Brian shows without reading and just kind of to point out, hey, Christians getting killed. And it's clear that the Christians weren't targeted for their belief, but they got caught up in the wave of violence that was happening there. And I mean, it's deplorable, don't get me wrong. I, for one, don't think people should be killed for their religious beliefs or their political affiliations. But this looks like a group targeted a Muslim minority that was loyal to Assad. So I think it's pretty offensive that Brian capitalizes on the deaths of people elsewhere to take a swat at atheists. Disgusting, really. And unnecessary, since the video in question here that we're supposed to be looking at, as I recall, is about atheists destroying reason and not violence between religious groups.
But even if Bigfoot believers were somehow forcing everyone to conform to their beliefs, as someone who is agnostic on that question, that is, someone who has withheld his beliefs on the subject, I would simply push back by arguing nobody should be forced to believe something they don't think is true or that hasn't been proven to them. I wouldn't be claiming that they don't exist unless I had compelling positive arguments to make such a claim.
So A, I'm relieved that Brian doesn't want people to die who don't share his beliefs. Always happy about that kind of thing. But B, what the fuck does I wouldn't be claiming they don't exist unless I had compelling positive arguments to make such a claim mean? Who is they? And fuck the arguments, what about evidence? I would like to think I wouldn't accept the existence of a thing unless I had compelling evidence. How about that? Kind of twerks your head, doesn't it, Brian?
So I'm sorry if I simply don't find that convincing. I don't think neutral observers should either. Atheism is the positive claim that there is no such thing as God, and naturalism is the claim that all reality is contained within the natural physical world, and that nothing outside of it, such as supernature or God, exists whatsoever.
Well, I guess it's over. We had a good run trying to define our disbelief on our terms, but Brian here doesn't accept it, and he's sorry. Not like sorry, but like sarcastic sorry, like less good Scarlet in the snark sorry. And again, forget about withholding belief until you have evidence. Apparently, we are making a positive claim that no gods ever and nature forever and ever and ever. Amen.
And if that were true, then I intend to argue that reason would have to be denied along with it. And I suspect that not too many atheists would be eager to make that concession because reason seems to be the cause they identify with the most in their community or movement or tradition or whatever you want to call it. Sam Harris wrote a book called The End of Faith with the subtext that said The Future of Reason. Richard Dawkins lent his name to The Foundation for Reason in Science. And Bertrand Russell once famously said, as soon as we abandon our reason and are content to rely on authority, there is no end to our troubles.
Well, we're finally getting to our point, but we have to pad it out with more name dropping and a quote he got off the Goodreads site.
But reason simply can't exist in a naturalist world. If naturalism is true, then reason, like God and religion, is mere illusion, which should be treated with just as much suspicion and perhaps contempt as all of these atheists treat the question of God.
Should we expect some thoughtful commentary from Brian about what illusion would mean in this context? Yeah, you know the answer. What he wants to imply is that it is something like a hallucination, and that maybe we humans have the impression of a faculty that is not as it appears. I have several philosopher friends who could spend hours talking about things that are an illusion and what that means, but Brian is not here for that, man. He's got atheists to bash.
And to explain why I make this claim, we have to take a second to describe what reason is.
Oh goody, a definition.
So reason is our ability to examine the world around us and to infer what is true about it. And such inferences often come from things unknown. The answer to a riddle or a problem is only arrived at through reasoning, and we see this all the time in something like algebra. We might say that we don't know what the value of x is, but we do know that y equals 1 and that x equals y. Therefore, our reason is able to uncover the solution, which is that x equals 1. And notice what we're doing when we use our reason. We are moving into the abstract of our minds, the abstract being non-physical reality.
I let him go on there a bit because that blah blah ultimately doesn't matter to his point, even though we could examine some of the language he uses. But holy shit, Brian thinks that our minds, the abstract of our minds, as he says, is not part of physical reality. Like, let that sink in. Our minds, Brian, are in our brains, which are very much a part of physical reality. Speaking of minds, it blows mine that theists out there think that abstractions are part of some supernatural realm instead of concepts that we have constructed because we find it useful to have a word to designate certain things that are abstract, that are not physical. It doesn't have to be something you touch to be part of the physical world.
Our minds allow us to step outside the reality we are considering and then examine it, weigh it in the balance, and determine based on that deliberation what is true about it. It's as though we are sitting above the facts we are considering and organizing them in a pattern we call reasoning, which then tells us something about the real world that we are considering.
And here's where it's useful to think about what the illusion is, that we are above the world or outside it, or I don't know, use whatever metaphor you'd like. When we're not, we are very much in the world, looking around us. And note, you say real world. Where is the supernatural you were prattling on so much about before? Where in the real world is it? How do we come into contact with it?
But if naturalism is true, then that means that everything and every event can be explained by natural causes. Like you and I are explained by the cause of our parents, and they by their parents, and all the way back until you reach the cause of the human species, which is itself caused by some biological ancestor, which is then caused by biological existence or life itself, and so on and so on. The Earth was presumably caused by some celestial collision of matter, energy, and forces like gravity. My indigestion is caused by the thing that I ate that I shouldn't have. And the natural sciences are the mechanism we have for examining this vast sequence of cause and effect, which explains, in theory, everything that can be explained.
I kind of feel like we should be done here. Brian just talked about how science can discover all this, and everything you've mentioned is like here in our universe. Where is this supernature? Are we ever going to get there? Are we? I wonder if I have a bottle of Prosecco for after this.
But here's where the naturalist runs into a big problem.
All right, I can't wait for this.
Because the psychological processes in our minds are also natural events.
And they are. We know a lot about the brain. Our thoughts are a result of brain activity. So no worries, man. Science can explain the brain.
Which means that they must have a natural cause if naturalism is true. They must be inevitable events forced to occur by that long chain of events in the sequence of cause and effect.
I don't know what he means by this. I have no idea what this prediction, hypothesis, conjecture pulled out of his ass as he was thinking above himself or whatever. I don't know what he thinks would happen here in this naturalistic picture he's invented for himself. My mind boggles at what he thinks he means.
But the kind of reasoning we described earlier is not inevitably caused. It's something that steps outside of the variables and examines them and draws conclusions about them. It appears to sit above and independently from all these natural events.
Did you listen to yourself, Brian? Did you hear yourself say, it appears to? Does it appear to, or does it actually do it? Is it an illusion? Look, Brian, baby boy, our brains are connected to our bodies, and we take in sensory information that our brain processes. Our consciousness is located in our brain. It's like an activity of the brain that makes sense of all that surrounds our body. Parts of our brain act independently of any conscious thought. We sometimes have thoughts we can't control. Like that earworm that won't stop playing at 4 a.m. with that song that you heard on the radio when you were coming home from work, and you just want it to end and have Hotel California go away forever. I'm sorry, talking about myself. We also have rumination. We have traumatic memories that we don't actually control. We have to work on that. And there are parts of our mind that we seem to be able to direct. We direct the mind to pay attention, and we can direct problem-solving centers. And by the way, other animals are problem solvers too. I wonder if they think they are standing above. I mean, if they're a crow, they're standing above. They're usually on a tree branch or a light fixture or something. But anyway, point being, other animals have this problem-solving capacity too. But I don't think that they think of themselves as being outside of nature or whatever.
But if it's just one of the natural events in question, then it can't be claimed that it was arrived at through whatever it is that we mean by reason. And we all intuitively seem to know this because something people do all the time to discredit the opinions of others as irrational is by accusing them of being caused by something other than reason. Actually, Richard Dawkins does this all the time. He says that Christians only believe in Christianity because they were raised in a Christian society. If they had been raised in a Hindu or a Buddhist culture, they would have been Hindu or Buddhist. He's taking for granted that because he can explain the cause of a belief as having its origin in something other than the process we call reasoning, then it is not a reasonable belief.
For fuck's sake, the fact that you used processes that we call reason doesn't mean that your conclusion is reasonable. This is why the scientific method is important. You have to test your beliefs, try to prove them wrong, knock them down if you want to be sure that you have well-founded beliefs. And still you might come to wrong conclusions. You can use reason with poor information or minimal information or accept bad information. Your brain might deploy logical fallacies to keep you with your current belief system because it's easier for the brain. It just keeps things easy. Long story short, you can use your reason and still be way fucking off base. And by the way, why is it people tend to stay in a religion that dominates in their culture? I mean, every so often you get some crossover, but it is funny. And it is a question I have is, are they using their reason or are they just sticking with something that they know? Good question.
If we can say something like, you only believe that Canada is going to win the hockey game because you're Canadian, or you only think there's a ghost in the next room because you ingested psychedelic mushrooms. If your thoughts are caused by something else, like patriotism or mind-altering drugs, then they aren't based on some independent process we call reason.
Oh my God, give this man a medal. Those aren't examples of people using reason. Congratulations.
And if naturalism is true, then all beliefs are actually caused in this way, which would then invalidate reason itself. Far from being free from the impositions of natural causes, it turns out to be subject to and under the dictates of all irrational causes. And if all that is going on in my mind is just a sequence of inevitable effects by irrational causes, why should I trust any of the conclusions of my mind as having something valid to say about the world or about truth? In fact, if what we call reasoning is actually just the caused events in our psychological systems, then whatever we might say about reality is actually just statements about the events in our minds, which really have nothing to do with external reality.
Non-existent Lord, give me strength. This man does not understand how the mind works. He does not understand it is not separate from our body, that we take in sensory data, that we have developed language to communicate and share what we've learned, that we have developed methods to test if our thoughts match reality or not, that we have evolved to have long-term memories, and we can write books about stuff that we transmit to others who can read them and understand them. Brian, please, son, go read some stuff about neuroscience, about how the brain works. You definitely have a sequence of irrational events happening in your brain right now, and I'm worried you're going to have an aneurysm.
Our so-called reasoning about the outside world turns out to simply be utterings about events going on inside of ourselves. And what we call reason is actually just an elaborate trick of those events, which convinces us that we have some freedom in arriving at well-thought-out conclusions.
This is why it would have been instructive a few minutes ago during the whining portion to elaborate on what illusion means in this context. Our experience of ourselves, our identities, our feeling of being an individual, these all may be illusions. A way we experience our brains that is not, in fact, real, which we could debate what that means. But this line of thinking is too subtle for Brian here, who seems to need a ghost in the machine to imagine that we have any reasoning faculties at all.
At the end of the day, abstract reasoning aims at truth, while natural events only produce physical outcomes.
The fuck does that mean? We use our reason to look at natural events and understand causes and effects and inner workings and, things about the world. And when our reasoning aligns with what we can observe, voila, the truth. Like, what is this even at this point? I have no idea what Brian is thinking.
If our thoughts are just the result of blind physical causes, there's no reason to trust them as reliable guides to truth.
Well, you shouldn't use yours to guide yourself to truth. And I guess I'm thinking it's a good thing that our thoughts are not caused by blind physical causes, then, whatever you think that means. Our thoughts are the products of chemical reactions in a brain that is receiving input. And fuck, I feel like I'm repeating myself now. Let's get to the end of this pathetic treatise.
Which undermines naturalism itself. That is, unless it's not a trick, and our minds and our faculties of reason actually are independent from the natural system of cause and effect, and cannot be explained as all other events are in this way, which means that in the case of the human being, there is something like a window or a door that opens to the outside of determined natural events. And when we employ our reason, we are walking through that door for a period of contemplation before we return with a conclusion about the world and reality that we just examined, as if we and everything about it aren't fatally determined by it.
There you have it. Thinking means there's a supernatural, y'all. Reason is like a door or a window or a liminal space to contact the non-physical realms of the whatever the spiritual realm, supernatural energy, whatever is supposed to be. I've seen theists claim dreams are evidence of the supernatural, and now just thinking is. Convinced now? Well, that just means you're a hater. Truly, we are in clown world. So what did we have in this video? We had some whining about atheists and Brian's comments, name dropping of famous atheists, some aligning of Marx, nice poisoning the well kind of thing. The idea that Christians aren't forcing their beliefs on anyone, and, we had a little slippage from beliefs to Christianity. And anyway, Christians are being killed, so shut up already. We also had a portion of not accepting what atheists say about themselves. Then reason means there's a supernatural because we feel above it all, and lots of misunderstanding how the brain works. But one thing we didn't get? How is atheism destroying reason? Didn't hear it, didn't see it. So what did you make of Brian and his idea that atheists can't have reason in their system of naturalism and all that? Put it in the comments below. I love to read your comments, and maybe you saw something that I wasn't able to touch on because I can't touch on it all. There's just too much garbage in these 11 plus minutes of shit. Yeah, and while you're down there, like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuffing. I love it when you do the YouTube stuffing. And Algorithmo and his consort Algorithmo will reward you with all kinds of wonderful and not so wonderful YouTube recommendations. As always, a lot of stupidity on the old YouTubes. And if you like what I do, you can buy me a coffee. Here are my cute kitties thinking you're buying me some kibble. That's all they know. They don't understand coffee. And that's good for me. More coffee for me. And thank you to everybody who's bought me a coffee, and especially to my Crimson members. Really, really appreciate it. And, I've got another Brian Holdsworth video that I haven't watched yet. So not sure what that's going to be, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be stupid. Bye for now.